Hi everyone, thanks for joining. We are just waiting for our moderator and we'll be starting shortly.
Hello, apologies for being a couple of minutes late. I had to refresh my browser to be able to do this. Welcome to Lena. Could you mute yourself because I think it causes a slight echo. Super. Yeah, this is better. Thank you. So welcome to this session where we really look at our alumni engagement of how we engage our alumni, how we have engaged alumni, how we had to adapt, and what we may or may not take forward of these times we find ourselves in. So my name is Melanie Whitaker. I'm with the German Marshall Fund. I'm based in Berlin. It's quite late in the evening for me now. My position with the German Marshall Fund is I'm the head of membership and development. In that capacity, I oversee all our application and selection processes for the various fellowship programs, as well as alumni engagement and the business development, so we have enough funds available to do our work. And I have with me today Elena and Maram, and I'll let them introduce themselves as well. And then we really want to look at and talk a little bit about how, as I said, how we engage alumni, how we do this, what we want to do, what have we learned, and invite all of you as well to share your best practices. So Maram, I'll pass it on to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Melanie. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining. It's a little bit, it's also a little late for me. I'm based in Jordan, Amman, and I'm working as a regional program officer for IRIX MEPI Alumni Connection Program. And we're working with alumni from around the MENA region. We're serving them in different capacities and different projects and activity after they graduate from their leadership programs with MEPI in the United States. Pass to you, Lena.
Thanks, Maram. Thanks, Melanie. Hi, everyone. My name is Elena Deary Savifard. I'm the lucky one. It's the middle of the day for me. I'm based in New York City, and I work at Global Health Corps as the Alumni Program Manager, and I work with alums of our fellowship program to help them in their leadership development journey as they grow in their careers in global health. So back to you, Melanie.
Thank you very much. So I really would like to learn from the two of you, what kind of alumni support you're giving. So is it over a certain period of time? Was it an ongoing opportunity? Do you separate it into different groupings? So Lena, would you like to share with us what your program usually does?
Absolutely. I'm happy to talk about our program at any time. As a leadership accelerator, Global Health Corps runs a fellowship program that has developed over 1,000 leaders in the health equity space since our founding in 2009. So our program is that we seed fresh and diverse talent in global health through our fellowship program, and that is the entry point for our alumni community. And after our fellows complete their year-long program, we graduate them and we work to sustain them and their impact as alumni. And so they are the ones who we need for the world's health systems right now. And our program is designed to provide essential resources to support them in their leadership growth and for them to mobilize collective action in the field. And so as Global Health Corps started as a fellowship, like so many fellowship programs, the first few years were just a proof of concept. And after a few years and a few classes, and after going through a few strategic plans, we noticed that our alumni really wanted to stay connected with each other. And so that was the organic birth of our alumni program. So we are about 10 years in from that point, and we are continue to reimagine our programming for our alumni who are based in 40 plus countries. We're mainly based in East Africa, Southern Africa, and the United States, but have our alumni trickled everywhere. And it is a lifelong admission and commitment that we have to our alumni. And first, the fellowship's their entry point when we recruit them young, but then all of our alumni are now leaders at mid-career to senior level positions, and we aim to support them in all of those phases.
Thank you. Mara, how do you engage your alumni?
Thank you so much for the question. I think for our program, it's a little bit different because we're working, and our program was designed to support alumni after finishing their fellowship programs, and it's an ongoing activities. So basically, the MEPI Alumni Connection supports community of leaders from across the Middle East and North Africa. We're working with around 2,000 alumni in 14 different countries in the MENA region. We're working with them in collaboration capacities to collaborate on leadership initiatives, develop their skills in order to contribute to their communities. So we're working with them after they finish their courses and leadership programs in the US and going back to their community through different activities, such as organizing networking events so we can build the network among the alumni themselves from different countries, different programs, and different year. We also offer them grants to support implementing local initiatives, entrepreneur projects, and we also connect them with mentors and like-minded professional alumni, either based in the US or in the MENA region, so they can grow and develop their capacities and help their communities in better ways. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. Your alumni, what age range are we talking? So, how old are your programs? And so when you think about it, age range.
We have 3 main programs that we're working with alumni participating in those programs. And the first one is with junior university students. So we're talking about 18 to 23, 24 years old. And we have more senior programs as the LDF programs, where we have alumni up to 45 years old. And this is the age groups that we are serving, we can say between 19 to 45.
Thank you, Elena. What about you? When you think about
so when we recruit for our fellowship, there is an age requirement where after you complete your university or college, you can apply up until you're 30 years old. So we recruit really young leaders that are fresh and really motivated. And again, our alumni community is a lifelong engagement. However, as a young alumni community and organization, we're about a few 10 years out. So our alumni, even though the ones that were from the earlier classes are still quite young, I would say we're mainly in our 20s and 30s right now, but we're also aging and we're also growing and maturing along with our alumni community and making sure that our offerings and trainings and mentorship also aligns with where our alumni are as they are aging up and becoming, entering different stages of their professional careers.
Thank you, because I was thinking, where I'm sitting, one of our oldest programs is from 1982. So at the moment, and then some of the newer programs, they really involve Gen Z. So I'm really ranging from Gen Z to, to baby boomers at this point, which of course they have very different expectations, the way we communicate with them, how we communicate with them, because that really brings me to the second point is like how the pandemic, this COVID-19 environment we are all finding ourselves in, how that has affected your ability to connect and engage with your alumni. And Tamara, maybe you can share something with us.
Yeah, sure. I think it is similar for everyone who's working with alumni, either if they are in the same country or they are in different geographical areas. It was the same challenge for everyone. I think back to early 2020, we had to reconsider our pre-planned project activities, and we had to design more effective online activities. We needed to come up with a pivots and recommendation during the global COVID crisis using all the available technologies and according to the needs and capabilities of our alumni and their communities where we served. So I believe that the virtual engagement component was always part of our program, but looking with all the situation of COVID crisis and limitation of in-person activities, we had to come up with trainings and networking events where are more advanced, and looking into individual grants for alumni to implement actually responses to serve their communities during the COVID crisis as entrepreneurial projects or community project and initiative. While the type of program that we offered stayed consistent, and generally speaking, we moved from networking and courses online, and we provided a lot of smaller grants and smaller frequent opportunities to alumni to conduct their own activities and use their situation in their communities where they can come up with better solutions for themselves and for the communities. So I think investing more in technologies and platforms and trusting more in the alumni power and leadership, that was one of the main changes that was affected because of COVID.
How about you, Lena, from where you're sitting?
Yeah, that a lot of what Madam said, it really resonates a lot, especially of additional programming and shifting. We also had some new programs roll out where we had our smaller regional groups of alumni get together and had some seed funding for them to work on COVID-related projects within their communities, which felt very, very timely. And I will have to say we also had to switch virtually, and I'll preface this by saying our alumni community was birthed out of the want for our fellows to stay in touch and to have that human connection. So that is a huge part of the DNA of our community. So we were not only forced to shift to virtual programming, but we had to take a look into the content of our programming. So now, and additionally, we are a community of global health professionals. So there's so many layers of how COVID-19 has affected our alumni community. And we were faced with questions about how to support our alumni's mental health. A number of them were working directly with COVID-related work. We have epidemiologists, contact tracers, people working on advocacy and policy around COVID. We also had to think about how to support our alumni because we were monitoring how the pandemic was disproportionately affecting minorities and people of color. And additionally, in the US, we were confronted with another pandemic of police brutality. So we had new challenges, new programming, and new mediums. So we had additions to our programming. As Madam said, there's still some of the professional development and the mentorship going on in the background, but we added support for our alumni in terms of new racial justice programming. We started focusing programs on mental health. We created safe spaces for our BIPOC community members. We had those funds for people to gather virtually and work on issues and have funding to address issues within our alumni's local community. So there were many shifts in content and both in the medium of how we connected. And I think you made a great point about the age of our alumni community. We didn't really think about that, but our entire community, they are on the younger side. Technology is a first language to them. So it wasn't a hurdle for them to get an email, log into something, and to do Zoom events. That is something that is second nature, and a lot of our alumni already work globally, so we're familiar with virtual meetings. So that is something that I'm thinking now. I'm very grateful that we had our alumni be able to just pick those pieces up in terms of technology.
Thank you. Yeah, very similar. So our network ranges literally these days from Anchorage, Alaska to Beijing, China. It's predominantly Europe and the US, but across the states, and very similar. So, how they've been affected, where the communities have been more affected. And very much having that kind of personal touch. Wasn't so much about content necessarily, it was more about being able to connect and sometimes also hear firsthand from other people of how they were experiencing things in their communities or the countries where they lived. And is there anything that you would say that you did that you thought like, well, never done this before, really added value, this is really innovative for what we've been doing here. So we definitely want to keep that. Is there anything that comes to your mind? Like either one of you.
I can say give more leadership and having more participatory approach with the alumni themselves. We used to have, assessments, annual need assessments and surveys that we collect to know what they need and how we can serve them to do better job in their communities. But I believe that one of the best lessons learned that having them be on board and designing our activities and designing our responses and their program is a great help. And we are actually using now, from now forward in our activities, we are having advisory committees, we're having them on board in our planning and in our activities. So I think this is one of the biggest lessons learned so far.
Thank you. What about you, Elena? So can we have okay, go ahead.
I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we added a lot of mindfulness trainings and sessions to our programming, which doesn't necessarily align directly with our impact trajectories that we've defined and measure for our theory of impact. So those are like management, social entrepreneurship, more of the quote unquote hard skills. But the mindfulness is definitely something that I think is going to stay and may not be directly aligned to our impact trajectories, but in terms of our organizational values of sustainable resilience, is a very important piece. And I think that we have also, we're still learning and iterating, but are curious about continuing hybrid programming where we get some of the best of both worlds, where we have some of the comfort of having our alumni be given the space to complete parts of a workshop or a course on their own, whether it's watching a video or doing a reading on their own time, but then also creating spaces for them to connect later on. So playing with both of those pieces in terms of more of a hybrid program going forward, I think are definitely some interesting things that we would like to hold on to.
And so thinking back over these past 18 months, what do you think was the biggest challenge that you had in engaging with your alumni? And so, that is, I think that was something probably that many of us faced, So, but yeah, when you think about it, I would really think like, what was one of the biggest challenges that you faced?
I think one of the biggest challenges was after the total lockdown. In the period of the full lockdown and everyone is in home and they just need to be connected with someone, they were more active with us and they were more more connected to each other and more interested in our opportunities. But when things start to reopen again, people started to look forward for in-person and a human touch and real things that they can do. So it was a little bit hard on having them stay connected as they started, as the started of the pandemic and the pivot plans and the virtual world. But we had to come up with, creative out-of-the-box solutions. And we tried to engage with them more virtually in a very modern style. So we came up with, for example, social media campaigns with a specific hashtag about MEPI leading, for example. And we encouraged all the alumni who is doing work during the pandemic that they share their success under the hashtag, a specific hashtag called MEPI leading, and show their work to other alumni and to the world and to their community. We introduced more advanced courses based on their needs and based on the new things. So we introduced Learn to Discern, or media literacy course, which is a curriculum that was developed by IRIX and adopted by the MEPI Alumni Connection, which helped participants actually discern information, including misinformation of health situation, COVID-19 and the pandemic and the vaccination. So it's all about how you pivot your activity and how you make them more align with what they need. Also for the individual grants, for example, we started with very small amounts, but we had to offer larger amount for the funding because they started with the small initiative, but now they know more, they want to do more for their communities. So we kept updating our activities. We didn't stick into 1, 2, 3. We kept developing them based on their feedback, based on their consultation. So yeah, I think that's one of the biggest challenges.
Thank you, Lena. Would you like to share a challenge? And then I have one more question, and then I'd really love to also hear from other people in the audience, hear their best practices or their ideas going forward. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think there are definitely many challenges. The first one that comes to mind is being an alumni community of global health professionals during a global pandemic was very challenging. We are a very tight-knit community, and there is so much importance on our connection, and it was really difficult to keep our alumni engaged because there's just, in addition to just general virtual or Zoom fatigue, there's no escape from COVID. From the minute they open their computers and are logging into work until they close it, there's just a lot of overwhelm in terms of COVID content, again, which is why I keep going back a little bit to some of the pivots to our training to focus a lot on that sustainable resilience and the mindfulness, because it is very, very difficult to disconnect. And when this community, which is so tight knit, and there's a lot of in-person connection points that we had intentionally built historically pre-COVID, it's hard to even create those spaces, even if we wanted to have those more connection pieces virtually, because it's really hard for people to feel that connection and to be vulnerable virtually. So that was definitely, I think, our biggest challenge. But as Madam said, just being really creative in how we create new campaigns through our alumni portal, where we have now an engagement calendar to get people more excited about a Throwback Thursday, where we share pictures about a moment at a previous alumni summer or during their fellowship year, and just trying to find ways to reconnect and reignite some of that excitement about being together.
Thank you. And I think, even within the work we're doing with alumni, and we hear that from other areas, other industries, or other settings, is somehow we lost the human interaction, the person to person, On the other hand, it also allowed us a form of getting to know somebody, or also a different form of intimacy, because all of a sudden we would be looking into somebody's living room, or there were the pets running through, and not only in our meetings, but also when we interact with alumni, or alumni interacting with alumni. So there's a different form of intimacy that is, even though it's two-dimensional, it does allow you to get to know somebody slightly differently. But going forward, as we are hopefully, and they're already threatening the L word here again where I'm sitting, is what would you say is something that you would take forward? What you've done these past 12 months, 18 months, and say, like, I'll definitely continue doing this, or we should be definitely continue to do this. Who wants? It doesn't matter who goes first. Maram, do you want to start?
I'll hop in. I think if this continues to be an opportunity, I think that being able to have some virtual opportunities to connect across the globe is something that we still, although our community really craves in-person connection, is something that we'd like to hold on to. One of our impact trajectories for our alumni is advocacy. And we try really hard to get our alumni opportunities to amplify their voices by speaking at conferences or panels like this one. And historically, we've had hurdles in terms of funding, visas, travel, when our alumni have been offered chances to speak. And so now that so many opportunities of conferences and panels are being hosted virtually, we've had the opportunity for so many of our alumni to have more opportunities like this for their own professional development, and also for them to play their part in advancing in the field of global health. And something that we started internally at the very beginning of the pandemic was our own internal webinar series called Shift Happens, where we are reacting to the ever-changing landscape around the world. And through that, we every month or so would have topical discussions about what was happening, whether it was vaccine supply chain, vaccine hesitancy, women in the workplace. And we also were internally creating those opportunities where a number of our speakers and panelists were sourced from our own community. So that also gives them an opportunity to be on a stage and practice their public speaking, and just have an opportunity to connect with someone that they might not have, and give our larger community an opportunity to come together and ask questions, have a great conversation, and geek out about something together. So although we all want to be back together, I do hope that we still have some space for some of these virtual events where we can have a lot more cross-cultural connection that wasn't there before.
Thank you, Mara.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with all of it, Lena, and I think we've learned mostly the same. Our alumni proven their flexibility and their ability to adapt changes. So working with alumni anyway in our program in different countries had some virtual component. It's a hybrid program. But what we've learned that working with the alumni virtually somehow give us the opportunity to be more inclusive, especially in terms of number of participants, timing, topics, and it gave us a lot of flexibility to be more inclusive. And our plan for the coming next 2 years, at least, that we will keep the momentum of working virtually with our alumni, at least offering them the courses that can be more flexible in terms of timing and number of participants and things like that. And I think some of the successes that we are maintaining for the coming year is the small professional development grants that we offer during COVID-19 situation, because it's proved that alumni can join the courses of their interest based on their needs and based on their timing. And they can join the virtual networking platform, which has allowed actually the alumni to build more informally intimacy and a close relationship with other alumni. So those are mainly the things that we're hoping to take forward for the coming few years, at least investing on them.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing this. Have you used any new social media that you hadn't used before? So what I did is, we mentioned it before, we all kind of had this Zoom fatigue or screen fatigue. And so when I had the opportunity, I actually moved across to Clubhouse, and I did some very informal talks on Clubhouse for the alumni. Even others could join as well, and it was very non-traditional topics for us because we have this wonderful community of alumni. So I had this one fantastic British journalist who had published this book about vegan meat and sex robots. I'm like, well, that's a really good topic. So let's do something completely different, or something we usually wouldn't be doing. So, and I thought that worked really well for us, where it was voice only. So not having then this two-dimensional. So have you tried anything you haven't done before of social media?
For us, we introduced a new platform. It's not a social media. It's called Coffee Roulette, and it's a platform where people can meet over a virtual coffee cup to discuss any type of topics they want to network on. Our main goal was to connect alumni with each other as one-to-one networking. So this platform, so we pay the subscription for the alumni, and the platform does the matching based on the answers of the alumni that they are doing. It's like, when are you free for a 30-minute conversation over a cup of coffee? So they match people upon their availability. And this is something that we introduced during the pandemic, because we used to use social media as Facebook closed the group, LinkedIn closed the group, and it's been very active even before COVID-19, and we make it more active during the pandemic. And the alumni themselves, they are managing those groups, but we wanted to introduce something else, and Coffee Roulette was one of the things that we invested in.
Sounds really cool. Could you put it in the chat so others can see what it's called? Lena, anything that you came across that you would say definitely keep it, was great fun?
I wish we had instituted Coffee Roulette, because that sounds really fun. But I will have to say we didn't institute any new types of social media, but we changed the way that we used what we had. So we internally, for our alumni, we have an alumni platform where people can log in and come together and chat and message. And I mentioned earlier, we put together an engagement calendar to get people a little bit more excited to be on the portal, and to prompt them to log in and share different tips and memories. And for our Instagram is public, and the followers aren't just our alumni community, they're potential applicants, they are friends of the organization, donors, and so our content was just for our general larger community, not necessarily for our alumni programming, but we did try for some events, even if they were more close to our alumni community, posting that on Instagram and saying this is for our community only, whereas previously we didn't really advertise on there because there's a larger audience, but that is something that we tried by creating new graphics and flashier ways to promote our social media. And then on WhatsApp, we just continue to use that. It's not necessarily social media, but it is a way that we connect with our alumni. We have a number of different groups, and again, have created smaller infographics about our programming. So it's not as text heavy. If you just see a quick glance of the graphic, you learn everything you need to know about the program and how to sign up. So nothing new, but just new ways that we have interacted with those platforms.
Super, thank you so much. Now, I would like to ask people who are with us here in this room if they also can, want to add something or maybe share, something maybe they have seen similar to Coffee Roulette or Canvas that they've been using, or just join our conversation. It doesn't have to be only the three of us. So please do join us and join the conversation.
There's a question for Lena in the chat. Amina is asking, is your alumni portal hosted on practical sites, Lena?
Yes, sorry, I didn't even see the chat. Our alumni portal is built on top of Salesforce using the Salesforce Experience Cloud.
Anybody else have a question or would like to join our conversation here? So, don't be shy. Okay, I have, our programs, some of them are almost 40 years old now. So, and particularly in the more recent years, what we have when there are the cohorts. So when we talk about alumni engagement, there's the alumni engagement that we do or we know of or organize, and then there's of course alumni engagement happening within individual groups because they were in a certain class or they were in a certain cohort. So I think that is also very interesting, and that's what I also heard. When I bumped into or talked to individual alumni, where they said, "Oh, from my cohort, we are very much in contact, and we upheld each other throughout the pandemic, and we chat regularly. We have a WhatsApp group or something like that." So I think that is also nice to hear that when we engage people or leaders or fellows that that even outside of our work is that we build communities and lifelong friendships, really. So that I always find very rewarding to hear. So.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we try to take advantage of at Global Health Core, where we have our different alumni chapters, which are at the regional hubs where we have large groups of our alumni based. But then we also slice and dice those communities, and we generally will have a class representative and different regional representatives so that we can have within these newer built subsets of our communities, still some of that familiarity and that connection that brings people back.
A couple of questions here. So Sarah is wondering whether we have used newsletters for our alumni and how the engagement or the readership has changed over the past 18 months, if it has. And Hannah, whether we have thought about alumni engagement metrics, particularly with COVID, where engagement has changed. So who would like to go first? You can either answer both or only one of them.
I'll take Sarah's question. Yes, we do. We have a monthly opportunity email. We don't call it a monthly newsletter. It's more an opportunity email where we share we first share with them all the opportunities that are available under the MAP Alumni Connection program for them, so they can apply, they can participate, and they can be part of the activities. And also we share on this news about some of the achievement of other alumni in other countries. So we share a success story every month, and we ask people to send us their successes and the news so we can share it with the bigger alumni network. And we share with them all possible available opportunity around the reward that they are eligible to benefit from. So we can keep helping them and looking for opportunities and benefit from what is offering. What has been changed over the past 18 months, I think they started to read the full email, the full newsletter. Before they didn't. I think the changes for us, at least, the impact was positive somehow on the alumni engagement. It's actually the situation pushed the alumni and forced them to get out of their comfort zones and to do things they didn't think of doing before. And it showed us a great leadership and pioneering capabilities around all our alumni. So definitely virtual engagement has expanded their opportunities as well as their impact in their community. So answering your question, Sarah. Lena.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll answer your question, Sarah, quickly. We also historically would send a monthly update on programming and everything. One change that we have made is that it's a lot less text heavy. So we have been utilizing a lot of graphics, headlines, designing a newsletter in MailChimp, just because we know that everyone is spending so much time on their screens. And the last thing that we want is our alumni to see a big bulk email with a lot of updates and large descriptions about our programming, where if we can do splashes of color and graphics and images that they can scroll through and click on the content that applies to them, and then we'll take them more to the detail. So that is something that we have changed, but we'll definitely keep going forward. And then I can talk to Hannah's question about engagement metrics. Have you thought about alumni engagement metrics, particularly with COVID and where engagement has changed? So this is definitely something our team is focusing on, because we want to learn what's working, what's not. One of our values as an organization is continuous learning. And so we pilot a lot of things, we test a lot of things, and we have tried a lot of new things during the pandemic. There's been a lot of new programming, while we still have some of our staple pillars of our mentorship and career development and growth, and some more of those functional trainings. And so we have started gathering signups and attendance and all these different metrics alongside all of the different tracks of our programming, so that we can take a deep look at what we are offering. How does that align with what our alumni have said they want throughout our assessments and alumni surveys, and what is actually being attended and utilized. So there is definitely a lot of data to go through, and there's so much for us to learn through what has transpired over the last 18 months. And I think a lot of that will inform our programming of what has worked, what we'll keep, what we'll ditch going forward, which is, the whole point of this panel. So that is a big part of it.
Thank you. Yeah, we also have a newsletter, and what has very, very good opening rates actually, and reading, but very similar again. It's like fluffing it up, less text heavy, less, so to say, this heavy policy stuff, but much more about featuring other people. Alumni love to hear about other alumni, apparently, especially alumni going places and changing and seeing what's going on, or with an alumna or alumnus have written a piece, for example. So again, it's really very much about that. Who's in the network? Who's in the community? But Cheryl also has a question, and it is about the depth of the engagement. If there's anything you have seen that works better than others to sustain engagements, or the incentives, interesting activities. I always find them to be, the more interactive they were, the better. But in terms of engagement, I would say throughout the pandemic is the digital is a blessing, and it's also a horror, of course, because a lot of people, may register. And I had something yesterday where apparently 60 people wanted to participate. In the end, we had 15, because it's so much easier to not click that button rather than make the effort of going somewhere. So, which is then also sometimes not nice for the speakers when you have somebody, even if they're fellow alumni. So that is something. What are your incentives, or what are your interesting activities that you found? are working really well?
I would say that the things that I think have worked well have been, and I think this has to do with what our community is like. It's a very supportive community. I feel the sessions that we were highlighting our alumni's work, or we had one of our alumni headlining as a panelist or a moderator. We had a lot of signups and a lot of people show up, and I think it's to support familiar faces and to lift up our internal community members, which I think has been great. I think a lot of our programming, if it was the first time we were doing something, the novelty of it was really exciting, and we had a lot of signups and people show up. But as Melanie was saying, it's a blessing and can be a curse, because it's a lot easier to register for something, show interest for something that is virtual, and then when the time rolls around, you're not able to wrap up your work, or you're in a meeting, or you ended up being caught up in traffic, and then you miss an event just because it's virtual. So I think what works is, at least for us, is when we are highlighting and lifting up our own alumni, giving them a chance to shine.
And then there was a question. We have about 10 minutes left. Lindy had a question, and she said that one of you, and I think it was Lena, I think it was you, but you created an alumni council to help the advanced programming in the virtual environment. And how did you involve your council members in that process? Or how do you?
Sure. Yeah. So we have our alumni chapters, and we have, as I mentioned, based on in our hub locations, we have a U.S. chapter, Uganda chapter, Malawi chapter, and we have within those chapters, based on where you are regionally, we have a chapter leadership. So they are people who are volunteer for the roles and are voted into particular positions of leadership within the regional alumni chapters. And we spend a lot more time directly working with them, emailing them directly, as they are our essentially liaisons to the larger community that they are serving in. And so they do help us a lot in promoting events. They, a lot of the times, have their own WhatsApp groups or groups within our alumni portal. And some of them also send their own monthly newsletters as well. And so we really try to build a relationship and rapport with our chapter leadership, so that they can also help us share the word about upcoming programming or events. And like I mentioned, within all the chapter leadership, we aim to dissect that even further, where we have, our board of our president and our vice president, but also have our regional representatives. For example, for the U.S. chapter, we will have a representative for the San Francisco region, so they are more familiar with that subset of the community, and will also have representatives for different cohorts, so that, our cohorts are relatively small each year, so it's more likely that you would answer a text message from a friend that you spent a year in the fellowship with, than someone who may be on staff, like me, although I am an alumni of the program. But
I would like to add on that, because we have a little bit more informal advisory committee that we're working with, especially that we have alumni in different countries and from different cohorts and things like that. For example, now we are planning to have our biannual summit virtually, which will take place in February 2022. So we opened a call for interest for all alumni who would like to serve as a committee, us shape the summit in terms of the agenda, the themes, the sessions, and everything. And we have selected 12 alumni from 12 countries, 12 programs, gender, to just make sure that it's diverse and inclusive and everything. And now they are working with us as team. We meet with them sometimes weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, to discuss the main themes, the main, like the title, the agenda, the communication plan, the promotion plan, and they are helping us. We conduct like a brainstorming session with them. Then the team will take their ideas, put it in a structured way to build the agenda and to move for the next steps. So I think this can be a practice that you can do only once for a specific activity, or you can have a committee every 6 months that helps shape and promote your activities among the alumni.
Yeah, we do that too. So alumni can stay engaged in various forms, whether they have a special interest working group, or when we prepare for a larger conference or alumni gathering, they like to be part of shaping. They help us identify the next cohorts by help us evaluating reading, application process, part of the application process. They help us with interviewing candidates. So there are very different ways, and that we've done that before, and we shall continue to do this. But we have already started in person again, in a very reduced way, in a very strategic way. In certain areas, we adapted it to a way to make it possible. And I don't think anything can ever take away in person and the experience of it, and the connections you make there with people that you may not have traveled before or you have not met before. I've noticed that very much. That I did one smaller meeting in Paris a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and even that group, they have their own WhatsApp channel, and it's so lively, and they keep going back to that. So I think that is something. And actually, earlier this year, I was in a big in a discussion round, and one of the investors of this very platform, Hopin, who also happens to be the CEO of the Web Summit, said Hopin is probably one of the best things that there are, but nothing will ever replicate a pub crawl of some sort. So it's really very much about the in-person that binds us together. But anybody else that still would like to come up or has a question or a comment? Let me just see if there's anything else in the chat room. No, that was Lindsay says, thank you, very helpful. I've got 5 minutes left.
I second that, Melanie. Actually, I am a MEPI alumni, so I'm working as a double agent with RX. I participated in MEPI program back in 2016, and when I joined the MEPI Alumni Connection as implementing partner as IRIX, I was like just giving all the ideas from my fellow alumni and my cohort friends and all other friends to just put them into the activity plan and the work plan. And I think the most impactful part was the relationship that was built based on the travel and based on the experience where people meet each other and learn from each other. So I wish that we can go back for in-person again as soon as we can. We're planning to have some smaller in-person activities early in 2022, but we wish that the summit will be in person, because our last summit was incredible, unforgettable summit in Morocco in 2019, where we had 200 alumni in one place, in one room. It was amazing. So yeah, hopefully things will get better and the world just recover from this pandemic.
Very much so. Lena?
Yeah, I would definitely echo that we are also very much anticipating being able to be in person with our alumni community, although there's definitely some benefits of what we have learned through being virtual because of the pandemic. Like you said, Madam, there's nothing like getting a number of our alumni together, and that is, again, how our alumni community organically began from a few years of our fellowship program. And even we're really hoping that we can get together, because a big part of our fellowship program, although it's just 1 year, is really integrating them with alumni of the program. And so we are looking forward to having all of these in-person sessions, because it's really a lot of where rich connection and collaboration comes from. And yeah, I definitely agree with everything that you guys have just said.
Wonderful, thank you. We are coming to an end. We have about 2 minutes left. So I want to thank both of you for spending the hour with me. And I took down some notes. I learned something. And thank you for your very thoughtful questions. Last but not least, do look up the people that were here in the room. The people that are here, find each other on LinkedIn or somewhere else and connect. Because that's also what we're about here, making these connections. And then hopefully next time, Cheryl, we'll have this IREX Summit in person somewhere. So with that, I shall release you into your days or afternoons or evenings. And talk to you later. Okay. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for attending.